Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Board Game BBQ Podcast. This is episode 259, brought to you by Advent Games and our wonderful Patreons. I'm Def, I'll be your host tonight, and I've got two other people with me today. Adrian, how you doing, mate?
Doing very well. I'm glad that you introduced yourself. I'm very impressed.
How about that? Hey, that's impressive stuff.
You must have written it down on your hand to remember.
I wrote it down on my screen, so that counts.
Yeah, it does count.
We also have Dan down in Melbourne. How you doing, Dan?
I am unstoppable, Def. Thank you for asking.
You're unstoppable. Are you playing Final Girl again?
No, not at the moment. No, but
Okay.
yeah, I read something during the week that when someone asks how you're doing, you're supposed to say I am unstoppable, and it just
really?
it instantly lifts your mood.
That's amazing. Me saying I'm unstoppable, that to me just like drains me immediately. Like
You're easily stoppable.
I'm easily stoppable at the moment. Pausable.
Yeah.
So what's been going on, guys? How's it going? You played any games?
I have actually. I've been playing a bunch of stuff, but it's quite interesting because I wanted to sort of talk to you guys about this on the show as opposed to in person and stuff before we recorded.
Well,
So,
you've been hiding it from me, so like
Yes.
I've asked you, and you're like,
You have,
"No, I'm
and
not
I
going to
don't-
tell you."
I don't like talking about stuff. This is my big thing. I don't like talking to you guys before we hit record. So we have to hit record before I can start talking because I don't like the
You worry we're gonna lose
inorganic
the magic or
experience.
something.
Yeah, I like the shock factor of going, oh God, what's he going to do now when I go off on a tangent? Like I am already.
All right. Strap myself in.
Strap in. Okay, so I got to play Earth, which was my oath, right, to play that again.
Mm-hmm. Spoiler alert.
And spoiler alert, I did it, completed. Hashtag oath fulfilled. Put that on the sheet, Draven. Thank you. But I was actually a bit underwhelmed after my multiple plays. So I've had 4 plays of it now.
Okay, but hang on.
Go.
The first time you played it, you thought it was really, really good, and then
I did.
you played it again, and you thought it was good, and then you played it again, and you thought it was okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Great.
Play it one more time, and it'll be on the sell pile.
Well, I think it's good. I don't think it's a bad game. Don't get me wrong. I'm not here to, can the game and say it's terrible. The game is good. Hands down, it is definitely a good game. And the simultaneous play is fantastic. It is definitely refreshing. I love the fact that you just constantly get to do actions, right? There's no downtime. That is the genius part of the game for me. I think that's the best bit. But after playing it and trying to do different strategies, it felt like I was doing the same thing the whole time.
Yeah.
And it didn't feel different. I tried to do just massive trees, just focusing on just doing huge trees and not doing any ground covers and bushes and shrubs. And that was actually part of the end game objectives card. So I knew that I would hit good points for that particular thing. But I think that it might just be a tableau builder thing as well, because the cards feel quite samey, I think, to keep that game on rails, to keep it balanced. So it's not just this crazy, thing of different mechanics that don't really work. So if you look at Everdell as an example of that, those cards, even they give you a little point here, a little point there, but they do feel quite samey in the base game. So what are your thoughts on that? Because I don't feel bad for it. I feel that it's a great game and people will still love it, and there's probably good replayability in. But for me personally, I didn't see the replayability in it. So where I've seen the massive amounts of hype sitting around it, I think that it could be one of those games that gets a huge amount of hype, but then it just drops off and it becomes a game that doesn't get played very often.
For me, I've played Earth a bunch of times now, only on BGA, mind you. And I will say as well that, and I haven't been on the pod for a while, but I do listen. And you were talking last week, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it was really the theme that grabbed you.
100%.
By the agates. The first time was you're talking about the mushrooms and the soil and all that sort of stuff. So I'm assuming the theme is still there, but once you get past the theme, the mechanic is just starting to run a bit a bit dry over and over again. And to me, when I played on BGA, it's more of a, as you say, the tableau building, but it's more of the puzzle. It's like it's a placement puzzle of where you put the cards to try and get maximum sort of benefits out of it. But outside of that, I tend to agree with you. I didn't really feel like I kind of felt like I was doing the same thing each time I played to a degree, or at least chasing the goals. I find quite often the same way when I play Wingspan as well.
Okay.
I'm quite often driven by those round goals and you don't have a great deal of flexibility. It's only what you draft and what you can do with the cards you've got. But yeah, I sort of understand. I know there's some big raps for it out there in the industry, and it was going to be the next big thing to kill Ark Nova, which in its own right people were saying killed Terraforming Mars. But yeah, I think that's justified. But that's also probably a good thing that you do realize when you're playing multiple playthroughs that you're not going to get when you just have a first impression or second impression.
Interesting you mentioned Ark Nova, Dan, because the way I described before Adrian's sort of feelings towards this game, that was the same kind of journey I had with Ark Nova.
Mm.
So I played it the first time, I thought, oh yeah, this is great. And the second time I thought, this is a good game. Third time I thought, this is okay. Fourth time I was like, don't know if I want to play this again. Mm. And then I sold it. I disliked it more and more every time I played it. And obviously Ark Nova has been a smashing success, right? So something...
Well, it was Board Game BBQ Game of the Year.
Something in my head doesn't click with it well. But I wonder if the theme of these games that has to do with nature, you mentioned Wingspan, we've got Earth, we've got Ark Nova, helps get more people into it, more people attracted to these games. And because I think the lighter the game, the more people it applies to, I think, you get this massive hype generated around it because of that. And that doesn't necessarily mean that that's it's a bad thing. It's great, because if we get more people into playing board games, that's fantastic. But it does pose the question of, has the board game industry become big enough now that we have these sort of subsections, these niches in it, where you just have to accept it that not all games will be for everyone, and that in fact some games that are massively successful for a specific audience in this space.
That's the same as movies, though, right? And music and all the other sort of forms of media. Like, I love horror films, yeah, but I don't really like gore horror films, and I don't really like slashers. I like sort of psychological horror. So that's like a genre within a genre, right? Like, and I like that small niche of it. So if you break down board games like that as well, I think that could also work.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah,
I think these sort of, well, no, I don't want to say gateway game, but like you said, that the nature theme is certainly opens it up to a wider audience than something like Pirates or Dragons or sort of space would. But that doesn't necessarily equate to it's going to be an all-time classic. It's going to be a sort of an evergreen game. It's stealing the nature theme there, but they are important. I mean, in a similar way that I kind of, and I think I was one of the only ones on the podcast that kind of bumped off Cascadia. It didn't really sort of, I understood why people like it, but I understand why some people love it, but I didn't love it. The nature theme sort of, I'd rather play something like Azul, which is still really just tile placement. You're trying to sort of, you're taking things from the bag and you're trying to place them, you're trying to meet certain objectives, and there's a bit of hate drafting and all that sort of stuff. I'd rather play Azul than play Cascadia. Yeah. I didn't really think Cascadia was doing anything that I hadn't seen before. But the fact that it was a much more friendly theme is great. It's great for the hobby, and people are going to then run with that and explore other similar games. Whether that's Calico or those other sort of, there's a whole bunch of them that came out around this sort of the same sort of 18 months. But yeah, again, the theme for me, I could really take it or leave it with Cascadia. Same for Earth. Same for Wingspan. I didn't play Wingspan for ages. I just went birds. Doesn't really interest me. And then once I've played it, I went, okay, I understand it, but I sold my copy of Wingspan because
Yeah.
it didn't really do anything new for me that other games.
Yeah, see, that's interesting. I think it's just clearly what games click with you, because I still have Wingspan, and you could say it falls into the same category as the games we're talking about, but I still would enjoy playing Wingspan. I'm not blown away by it, but I still enjoy playing it. But, some of these other games are just, they just don't click with me anymore. So
I've said it multiple times. I feel like Wingspan is great because it is so tight. I've had like the tightest games ever with Wingspan, more than any other game. So there's always a shoe-in that someone could pip someone else and take the win. And that's why I think I like Wingspan more, even though the theme doesn't sing to me as much as Earth does. I think the mechanics in Wingspan just makes it so tight. And I've had so many like games where it's like you count up those points and it's like, 95, 96, and then someone gets 102, 103, and you're like counting up those points as on that little sheet, and you can see that balance, and it's like, oh, it could be anyone's game, and I love that part of it. So
yeah, very good. What else?
It's interesting because we'll touch on it later as well with the question of the pod, but I think theme for me is theme is one of the things that will bring me back.
Yes,
to a game. But there's a couple of games that sort of do similar things. And if there was a space or a pirate or a horror theme versus a nature one, I wouldn't be tabling a nature style game.
That's fair enough. I actually want to keep the conversation going a little bit longer.
Well, at least for an hour.
Well, yeah. Well, we'll fill it in for at least another hour for sure. But not with this particular
conversation going.
Yeah, such a
it's unheard of.
Yeah, it hasn't happened before. But I have another issue with a hype game that I really, really want, and I cannot explain why I want it. And I think it will be. I think that I'll really enjoy playing it with Finn. I've spoken about it before briefly, and we have had a massive discussion about it in Discord, which was a really good thread. And I found really interesting from everybody's aspects and different inputs to that. But that Lorcana game, the Disney Lorcana, I really, really want it. And now it's obviously a massive hype game. It's sold out everywhere. It's sold out in the UK, sold out in the US, probably because they did a low enough print run to make sure everybody that bought it made it sell out, so that the people like me that are like, I want the thing, but I don't know why I want the thing. I just want to buy the thing.
It's like crack.
Yes, that's right. But I can get crack tomorrow. I can't get Lorcana tomorrow. That's my problem. Right. Okay. So like, I feel like, I don't know why I want it, but I feel like Finn would really enjoy it. And as a kid growing up that collected cards, granted they weren't a living card game, it was just a collectible card thing. I feel like it would be something that I'd like to do with him, buy a pack, bust it open, see if you get a rare one in there. I know it's like basically loot boxes, which I hate.
It is. It's way too loot boxy for me to try and get involved.
Yeah, I get it, but I've also read a bit into Magic the Gathering, and from what I understand, Magic the Gathering also started off quite basic and wasn't as large and as crazy as it is now with the different abilities and different powers. So maybe this Disney Lorcana game will start off basic and then the mechanics will change over time. Because if you think that this Lorcana thing's not going to start adding in Star Wars and start adding in Marvel in years to come, you're crazy. It's definitely going to happen. If this thing is as successful as it is at the moment, in 5 years' time, we will be seeing those characters and those cards start to flood into the game.
Yeah, I don't know. Like, I'm very skeptical about these types of things that have massive IPs behind them. We've spoken about this before, because the hype gets generated purely based on the IP and not the game design. The first few things I've read about the game say that it's okay. So I think that it also, I mean, as big as Disney is and the whole IP that comes with it, I mean, you have some serious competition in this space. Like, Magic is no joke. No. There cannot be a bigger competitor for them in this space. So it will be interesting to see how they go with it. but at the moment, I can't say I have much of a desire to try it. So
yeah, I haven't looked into it too much, only because I understood the concept, and I've sort of played through on Dice Tower, and when I heard that there was additional packs, it just felt very loot boxy, kind of almost like a paying to win. Whoever can buy the most packs and lucky enough to find those rare cards, does that put them in a situation where they're at an advantage? I don't know enough about the sort of the deck construction.
I think it's more like there are rarer cards, obviously, in those packs, but it's more like getting the shiny version of a card that already exists. So you might get, the genie, but then you could get the shiny genie, which has a different card art and it's all hollow foil and sells for like $1,000 on eBay, because that's another thing. Some of these cards are already going for big money. I know that Magic the Gathering had the One Ring that came out recently, and Post Malone bought that for $2 million US. I'm not saying it's at that level, but Magic the Gathering started somewhere. I just feel that maybe, and Pokemon is exactly the same. And this is an IP that, I love the IP. I love Disney stuff, and I love the things that they also own in different forms, like Star Wars and Marvel. So I don't see myself getting into like Jules and Connor level of like Warhammer and that, and also Magic the Gathering, because they both played Magic. I always sort of I just want to try it. Do you know what I mean? I just want to try it and have a go at it and see what, see if it's something that me and Finn could enjoy together, as opposed to I need to buy all of the packs and just keep busting packs like a crazy person.
So do you have it? Box breaks and case breaks. So do you have it on pre-order at the moment?
No, I don't have it on pre-order because I currently have my mum driving around half of the UK looking at all the small little bespoke toy shops trying to find it for me. So
it is crack. You've got a dealer out there
to have an international dealer
sourcing it for you.
But yeah, I just thought it was interesting because it was another hype that probably, isn't that mechanically different to many other games that I've already tried. But I feel like the IP is definitely pulling me in for the fact that I can play it with Finn and he might get some enjoyment out of that, as opposed to if I just played Magic the Gathering and there was like, I don't know, let's say there might only already exist My First Magic the Gathering or My Little Magic the Gathering, an easier version of the same thing. He probably wouldn't enjoy that as much because there's no affiliated IP for him to make it like an emotional connection to those characters and to what he's doing. Whereas, the mouse has me brainwashed pretty well. So I'm like, ooh, Aladdin card. This is so cool. I want this for no reason. But yeah, I just thought it was a good thing to talk about. I definitely would like to get it at some point and try it, but I'm not going to roll like $200 for the box because that's kind of how much it's going for at the moment.
You say that now, but I'm waiting. It's basically just count down till Adrian falls down the rabbit hole.
Yeah, I'm not Mike, all right? I'm not going to spend ludicrous money on something from Europe. I can't justify it, but I would like to give it a go at some point. So,
okay.
Any of our UK listeners want to, send me up some Lorcana to Australia?
Okay, so this is
that's what now the truth comes out.
This is a live ad. Can somebody listening please send Adrian a copy of Lorcana so he can stop talking about it?
I don't think anyone can get it. That's half the problem.
You've got a dealer out there trying to source contraband for you, and now you're looking for a sponsor as well. I think you definitely have a problem.
Yeah, I do. I get it. I definitely do.
It's cardboard crack.
Very good. What about you, Dan? What have you been up to?
Most of my games
playing Disney Lorcana.
No.
Okay.
Most of my games at the moment have been limited to BGA, and it's funny because BGA recently did their, I want to say it was 30 days, not 30 days of summer, because summer is, well, maybe it was their summer. They went through, they were dropping a new game every day on Board Game Arena, and a couple of them I've really gravitated towards. One of which I didn't even know was, sorry, this wasn't part of the recent drop, but a couple of episodes ago, Connor was talking about Tash, Kalar, which is a game that Sarah mentioned way back on her first episode, and then Mike has mentioned it before, and then Connor mentioned he was playing it on BJ, and I went, all right, well maybe I'll give it a shot. I've been playing a bunch of Tash Kalar now. It is great. I'm really enjoying it.
Okay.
It reminds me of Super Fantasy Brawl, in the fact that you're playing for these objectives rather than just sort of battling, and it's kind of you've got the cards, and you're playing your they're not warriors, they're whatever they are, fighters, and you're trying to upgrade them so that you can put them in a particular position. But it's not a matter of just trying to get as many warriors out there. You got to be careful at where you put them. And it's funny because I was playing a recent game. I've been playing a lot against Jonathan from our Discord, and
is it a 1-versus-1 game?
Yeah, it is, and it's the team you have is unique, so it's not the same as what the other person is. I think there's 4 different ones you can get, but BGA just allocates it to you. But you've got level 1 fighters, your level 2 fighters, and then if you're lucky enough, you can get your level 3 fighters, which can do a lot more damage. And he had a lot of level 2 fighters out there, and I didn't have very many, but they weren't in the right spots on the board for him to be able to meet the objectives, because there's certain green and red areas where one of the objectives might get 3 points. If you upgrade 3 of your fighters on this turn and 2 of them were on red squares, or if you've got enough fighters that stretch from one side of the board to the other, you'll get 2 points, and it's the first to 9 points. So it doesn't matter how many you put out on the board, as long as you're meeting those objectives, then you'll get the points, and then you'll then you'll win the game. So it's very, very strategic, a lot like Super Fantasy Brawl, where it's not just bash and crash, but you really got to be be quite strategic about what those objectives are for the round, and who can actually meet the objective first, not who can defeat the other person first. It's really, really clever, and I've been enjoying it.
Is that one of those games that you almost have to play real time, Dan? Because I remember talking about Super Fantasy Brawl, that because of the reactions and stuff, it's like really painful to try and play async. I never play async anyway, but I'm wondering if this is the same thing, or it works well.
It can be. Jonathan and I are usually pretty quick. And the board is not that complicated that you can't have a quick scan of the board, remember where you're up to. If I was playing multiple games of this, then I'd probably struggle. It's the only game I have on the go of Tash Kalar, and when we finish it, we just start a new one. I think we're fairly even in terms of win-loss. I might have my nose in front on the scoreboard, but no, it is really good. Definitely recommend it, and probably should have listened to Connor and Mike and Sarah a long time ago on that one. So, and the other game that I don't want to set a precedent. The other game I've been really enjoying is a game called, I want to say it's called Knarr, because it starts with a K, but surely it's not Knarr. It must be Knarr, Knarr, and it's a card-based game with Vikings, and everyone's got a player board, which is essentially a ship, and above the ship are 3 blank tracks, or there'll be 1 asset on one of the tracks. And then you've got one side of the ship is where you can collect recruits. You can have up to 3 recruits, and the other side is on the other side of the board, you can have up to 3 silver bracelets. And the silver bracelets you use to trade, and I'll explain that in a minute. But then there's these Viking cards, and I think there's about 40, 50 different cards, but there's mainly 5 colors. And every Viking comes with an asset. And you start with 2 Vikings in your hand. And then what you do on your turn is you recruit one of the Vikings from your hand onto your ship. And then as I said, each Viking has an asset at the top of it. So you might get another recruit, token. You might get a victory point. You might get a reputation point. So in the middle of the board, in the middle of the table, there's a reputation track. And so as you move along the track, there'll be certain waypoints, if you like, where it'll be 1 VP, 2 VP, 3 VP, 4 VP. And at the start of your turn, you actually check the reputation track first. And depending on where you are, you'll get 1 VP. So as you move along the track, and now you've got 2 VP, that means you get 2 victory points at the start of every one of your turns. So it is worthwhile trying to build that reputation up, because then that's almost like a residual victory points that you're going to get every single turn. But what you're trying to do is you're trying to build up these Vikings on your ship in columns, and once you have enough, there's these these cards that are lands. I think there's trading lands, and exploration lands or something. And one of them might be, if you've got three red Vikings, you can explore this land. If you've got one Viking of all 5 colors, you can explore this land. And so once you get enough, instead of recruiting on your turn, you actually explore, which means you trade in. I've got 3 red Vikings, and I'm going to explore this land. And the land actually goes above your ship. So where I said before that there's 3 little tracks above your ship, the land will have an extension of those 3 tracks with additional assets on them. And so on your turn, you can recruit, you can explore. And the third thing you can do is you can trade, and you're trading your silver bracelets. One to claim everything you've got in that first track, 2 silver bracelets to claim both the first 2 tracks, and 3 silver bracelets to claim all 3 tracks. So the more Vikings you recruit, you then trade them in for those lands. You add those lands to your ship, which means that every time you trade, you're going to get more and more assets. So then you're building up your reputation, you're building up victory points, and it's a first to 40 wins, first person to 40 victory points. So it plays really, really well. It's more the draft. So there's 5 Vikings that are out there on the main board that everyone's drafting. So if you've got your eye on one of the lands, almost like a Splendor, where you want to get that card. So you need the right gems to explore to take that merchant. Same thing, you need a certain number of Vikings or a combination of Vikings to explore those lands. And so everyone's taking turns in drafting these Vikings, and then you get the benefit of that land, which gets assets, which then you can trade to get more victory points. And it plays really quickly. It plays in about maybe 15, 20 minutes when you're playing just a straight game. It's just really, really simple, but it's really enjoyable.
This is a new game, isn't it?
Yes.
So
yep.
I saw it on the hotness list on Board Game Geek, and I thought, I don't recognize this game. What is this? And then, I realized it must have been new. But then you said that you've been playing it on Board Game Arena.
I've been playing it a bunch on Board Game Arena, yeah.
Which means, there's more and more newer games now being released there, as opposed to, something that's been there for a while.
In fact, my sizzle for later on is another game I've been playing on Board Game Arena that is also not out yet. It's coming. There's copies available at Essen, and I think they're looking for a US publisher. But yeah, that's BGA is where it's at the moment. Board Game Arena has got a lot of great games, and these little games that play in 15, 20 minutes, they're great.
I was going to say that must be part of the new hype train and also just knowledge base. BGA is putting these games out there, then they're just jumping up the hot list because people are probably going, I've played this on BGA, I've got to search it up and look up what this game is. So it seems to have some kind of an influence over what's getting up on that list. So
yeah, it's becoming bigger and bigger. I was looking at some numbers the other day, and I think I was looking at Ark Nova, and Ark Nova I think has like 400,000 games played on Board Game Arena.
Yeah.
Something like that. Like the numbers we are talking, they're becoming big enough to influence the industry now, I think. So it makes perfect sense to see more and more newer games going on there.
And for it to be successful on Board Game Arena, you would think that the mechanics, the game itself, really has to shine, because you're not getting sucked in by fancy components and stuff. That's because right, you don't have access to all that sort of stuff. So really, the game's got to stand on its own to a point where you go, I have to get this in real life. I need to buy this game because it plays really well.
I want to show this to my group. I now know the game. It's easy enough to learn or whatever. I want to show this to other people. Yeah. So,
and I will be grabbing a copy of Knarr in the near future if it comes available. So yeah, so awesome. They're 2 games on Board Game Arena that I've been playing a lot and having a lot of fun with.
Well, oddly enough, I've been playing some lighter games the past couple of weeks, and I think it's fair to say that we now have a new family favorite.
Do tell.
Well, I was looking at what games we used to play a lot with the girls and all 4 of us as a family, and the ones that consistently hit the table are mostly abstract games, because some of the others, they just don't have the replayability, and some of them they just become properly annoying. Like I'm thinking here things like Rival Restaurants, for example, which is not my favorite game, but because my youngest one loves it, we've played it a bit. But the game I've played the most with my youngest daughter, and that it always comes back, was Patchwork.
Yep.
The Uwe Rosenberg abstract game. And so I thought, okay, well, what if I try and get something off the swords for all of us to play together? And I bought Framework. So Framework is another Uwe Rosenberg game. Apparently it re-implements Nova Luna, but I haven't played Nova Luna. I'm not sure. I had a look at the components and pictures and stuff, and it didn't seem similar. But anyway, so Framework is like this tile laying. You grab tiles from a bag, and then people just draft them, and then you have to create this tableau of tiles. And these tiles have two things. They have like little buttons in the middle that are tasks, and they also have frames around them of different colors. And so you might pick up a tile that has two numbers in the middle that are yellow and silver, and say yellow 4 and silver 5, which means you have to connect to this tile a chain of 4 yellow, or 2 or more, 1 or more chains that add up to 4 yellow frames or 5 silver frames to cover those tasks. And whoever gets all of their markers out on the board first wins the game. And it's a very, very simple to explain game, but the drafting of the tiles and also the way you start positioning them makes it very fun. It doesn't last long. It's probably the same length as Patchwork, I would say. So maybe 20, 25 minutes game. We had a 4-player game tonight, and that was 45 minutes for 4 players. So still quicker than something like Azul, for instance. But it's fun, and each person kind of does their own thing, but there's still the element of drafting the tiles. So yeah, I think Framework is a keeper, and it's a nice refreshing sort of situation after playing Patchwork for so long. And to be honest, I haven't gotten any abstract games lately, the last few months, and so having a new one kind of refreshed my desire to play more abstract games. So that's been very, very interesting. And everybody,
so were you playing Framework at 2, or have you played at 2 as well, or were you just playing it?
I've played
the
it.
Whole family.
No, I've played it heaps at 2 with my youngest daughter. Played it at 3. Played it at 2 with Timmy. Played it at 3. Played it at 4
so
today.
You've given it a fair workout then.
Yeah, it's been great. So
I wasn't familiar with it. I'm going to check that out, because Jen and I played Patchwork. Was one of our go-tos, like when the boys were babies, and when they go down for the afternoon, we'd put on a pot of coffee and we would play Patchwork.
Have a look at this. This is really cool. It's quick. It doesn't, make your head spin, but it gives it enough of an exercise to warrant the time you spend with it, and it's just fun. It's just a fun, quick game.
Yeah, I think I'll look into it.
But yeah, for sure, you should. Yeah. I wanted to talk to you, Dan, knowing that we are in the podcast together, about Final Girl, because I got that as part of a July Secret Santa Christmas in July exchange. And I kind of had it in my crosshairs at some point as a quick solo game, but never kind of got it. And so I really enjoyed it. I played a couple of games now. I only have the one feature film.
Mm-hmm. The sleepaway camp with the Hans the Butcher?
Yes.
Yep.
And I thought it was a bit swingy depending on the scenario. Like there's one scenario where all the victims are spread out in the different locations. So it's just impossible to try and go and save them all. And then there was another one that they're all like concentrated in one spot. And as a starting event, there was this special victim that Hans had his eyes on that was on the other side. So I had enough time to go and almost get them all before I try and reach him. But I really had a good time with it. I was super impressed with it as a package. Like the whole thing has been thought out very well in terms of, taking out the box covers and using them as the actual game boards. That was super impressive. The whole thing, even the rule book, and I think I've spoken to you about this before. Like, the rule book is so detailed, and for a game like this that is lightweight game, you don't expect it. You kind of think, oh yeah, people will infer things, but it is so well done. It has examples everywhere. For somebody new that's coming into this is fantastic, because it gives you the full experience of a game that can get you a lot of fun, even if you play it with somebody else, as sort of discussing what you want to do. I know it's a solo game, but
yeah. No, I'm great. I'm glad you enjoyed it. So obviously, it was in my top 5 last year, and for me, one of the things that I always walk away with is, because sometimes you'll lose like brutally, like very quick, depending on scenario. Otherwise, sometimes you'll stretch it out and you won't be able to find the item you need, or you can find it really early, and that can sort of turn the game around. But it's the different little nuggets in the story. Like, for instance, in Sleepaway, there's one scenario where suddenly, because the events can happen during the game, and suddenly the jock, your boyfriend Jock, so, high school quarterback or whatever it is, he's suddenly in the game now, and you got to protect him because the Hans the Butcher is coming after him. And I think I mentioned on the podcast once before the Gretsch Manor story, which is like a poltergeist haunted house style, and you got to go in and save the girl, and the little girl, and I found the little girl, and then there's suddenly I put an event card over, and she wouldn't leave without her bunny. So now it's like, no, we got to go. And it's like, no, I got to go try and find a stupid little bunny first before I'm able to leave the house with this little girl. And just little nuggets like that, and sort of really sort of tie the theme for me back into those sort of horror tropes. And that's probably the one of the biggest things that drew me to the game and keeps me coming back. And the fact that, as you said, it's such a compact little game. Setup and pack down is really quick. It's really quick. It's a relatively small footprint.
I was really impressed with the whole package. I think that I asked you, and you said that there is quite a bit of variety with the different package or the different feature films, because obviously I only have the one, and so I don't know how frequent you're going to be playing the same again and again. But
I think I've only mixed and matched once. So for the most part, I stick to. But there's the maps are very different, and the maps will play out differently. With the haunted house, for instance, it's basically a house layout. There's only certain points where you can go up to the next level, but you can come out the windows and go back to the ground. As well. But also the characters, the villains, they will play differently as well. So the Doctor, I think it's Dr. Sleep or something, the kind of like a Freddy Krueger style one. They have a sleep and a wake, almost like two different turns. So it can do things. It can do things while everyone's asleep, but not while people are awake. And the poltergeist can actually travel through walls and stuff. So, and then you can completely mix all that sort of stuff up. So, and get really creative. And Van Ryder Games have announced that season 3 is coming soon to Kickstarter. They've actually announced what the boxes are going to be. There's one that's kind of like Saw.
I saw the picture the other day.
There's. I can't remember the other ones now. What, like a Pinhead from like Hellraiser?
Nice.
Yep. There's 5 boxes that are coming out. I can't remember the others off the top of my head now, but more content. And they've also promised a few different surprises and stuff. Because I'm wondering whether maybe they're going to try and bring in some sort of campaign style. Because they did that with the first game, which was the first. This is like a reinvention of the old Hostage Negotiator.
Hostage Negotiator, yes.
And so with Hostage Negotiator, they brought out a campaign style for that rather than just add-on packs with more scenarios.
Yeah. But I mean, I think from my perspective, coming in as somebody that plays massive, huge, elaborate, heavy games, and I thought this was not one of those games that simply gets me a break from those bigger games.
Mm-hmm.
I thought there was a proper, I admired the whole package of it. I think it sort of screams a lot of work and love they've put into this. And I think that, I mean, like you said, there's already a 3rd season coming. So I think there's going to be a lot more of this system that we will see in the future in different iterations. But I was super impressed with it. So very happy to have got it.
I do love when they have a good system and then they can just add to it and add to it and add to it and make it different content rather than an expansion. Do you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah,
it's actually
or
a
find
different
new ways to
thing.
mess with that system a little bit.
That's
Yeah,
it.
100%.
That's the key, because even if the system is good, it doesn't necessarily mean that the different iterations are going to be equally good or different enough for you to warrant playing or having the different iterations of it. And this one, it sounds like it's definitely fits that bill. So there you go. A few different types of games we've all been playing. How about we take it a notch up now and go to do some sizzles?
Let's do
Sounds
it.
good.
Who wants to go first? Dan, do you want to kick us off? You said that you are going to sizzle a game that you've been playing on Board Game Arena, but
Yes.
that's not released yet.
Correct.
Oh, wow.
So,
Okay.
Yeah, I won't bury the lead. The game is called Dracula versus Van Helsing, and it's a two-player. It's a two-player card game. It kind of invokes sort of fugitive, Hanamakoji, those sort of style, with a bit of love letter thrown in as well.
Okay.
It's from Mandu Games, and I was looking at during the week. So it was available for pre-order, where people could pre-order it and then pick it up at Essen.
So straight to retail?
Yeah, but it's not available at retail at the moment. So I think the
Side note, did you know how many games are being released at Essen this year? No? I saw the number and it blew me away.
Well, yeah.
Please tell me, because I'd love to know.
That was a few weeks ago. They haven't finished counting even yet. They didn't have all the announcements from all the publishers. They were up to 860 something, and I was like,
wow.
Whoa, what?
That is insane.
That is madness. Sorry.
No. So Dracula versus Van Helsing is a two-player game where one person plays Dracula, and obviously, no surprise, the other one plays Van Helsing. It's essentially a card game. So there are four different suits with the cards 1 through 8, and think of it like Love Letter, where every card has an action on it. But essentially, what you're doing is, there is a board that sits in between the two players, and it consists of 5 different areas or districts of the city. I was going to say London, but it's not Jekyll and Hyde. It's just Dracula and Van Helsing. But there's 5 different districts of the city, and there's 4 people within each district. And what Dracula is trying to do, Dracula to win the game needs to kill or turn into vampires 4 people in one district. Meanwhile, Dracula has 12 health points, and so Van Helsing is trying to stop Dracula from winning a particular district and thus turning someone into a vampire. And in turn, he actually gets an attack on Dracula. So if they can kill Dracula from 12 lives, then Van Helsing will win. The other way that Dracula could possibly win is if he endures 5 complete rounds, because the game only goes for 5 rounds and that's it. So what you're doing on your turn is you'll start with 5 cards, and the 5 cards sit in a holder in front of you, facing you. But once the 5 cards are in front of you, you can't rearrange them. Kind of like what's
Scout?
Well, yeah, Scout. I was actually thinking. What's just gone from my head? What's the fireworks game? I want to say Hanamakoji, but it's not. It's.
I don't know any games
Someone
with fireworks other than
the fireworks game.
Rococo at the end.
Hanabi. It's Hanabi. So the 5 cards are in front of you, and what you do is you'll draw a card, and then you need to actually play a card, one of the 5 in front of you, or the card you've just picked up. What you're trying to do is the 5 cards in front of you equate to one of each of the 5 districts in front of you, and at the end of the round, which you can trigger, and I'll get to that in a moment, you'll compare your first card with the other player's first card, and whoever is higher wins that district. So if I've got an 8 and Adrian's got a 7, then I win the district. And if I was Van Helsing, then Adrian loses a health point. If I was Dracula, then I'll actually turn one of those people in that district into a vampire, and that's 1. Yeah. But the cards themselves, they're 1 through 8. Think of it like Love Letter is when you discard one of the cards, you have to do the action that's on that card. So you don't want low cards, but if you discard a 1, you have to reveal one of your cards to the other person. So there's the trade-off. If you discard a 2, I think you get to see what the next card is, so you know what the other person's taking. All the way up to the 7th card, and the 7th card lets you rearrange the the trump. So I should have mentioned when it comes to when you have the face off at the end of the round, it's not just whose card is higher. There's also a trump suit as well. But you can rearrange the trump suit if you discard a 7. But then if you're discarding a 7, you're less likely to win that district because 7's actually a good card you want to keep. So the game's really well balanced in terms of if you're getting rid of low cards, then it's got a really sucky action. And if you're getting rid of high cards, you get a good action out of it. But then, of course, that's one more high card that you potentially can't win at the end of the round. The game goes until one person, instead of drawing a card, decide they want to end the round. And then the other person gets one more turn. So if you've got your 5 cards in a position where you think you're going to win all 5 districts or the majority of the districts, you can call it, but the other person will get one more turn. And then you compare the district. So whoever has section 1, district 1, district 2, all the way through to 5. And it's not just the first you check the trump suit, and whoever has the higher trump. And if there's no trumps, then it just goes to whoever's card is higher. If it's a tie, then the other remaining 3 suits, it's not a trump suit, are actually in order. So green might be more better than yellow, might be better than red. But there are cards that you'll play where you can rearrange the trump. So if I've got a lot of red cards in my hand, I could get rid of a 7, and I could potentially change the trump from yellow to red because that suits me. But again, I'm getting rid of a 7. Or if you discard a 3 and you get to see one of the other person's cards, then you can later discard a 4, which allows you to swap cards. So I know that Adrian's got a 7 on District 3. So when I discard a 4, I'm going to move my 8 to match his 7. So I'll actually win that district. It's just, there's so many different juicy decisions going on there, but because it is just one-on-one, it's just this real, it feels like a real sort of cat and mouse style thing. And because you basically just cards 1 through 8, and there's only four suits, you could potentially math it out and go, well, I've got this 8, that 8. I don't think the other 8's been discarded. Has he got another 8? You might see one of their cards and then they'll discard it. So now you no longer know what they've got, or you get to see the top of the next one. So you know where they're going to slot it in, even though they're not sort of showing you know where they've put it. It's just really, really cool. And for a 2-player game, it plays pretty quick. And I've lost more times than I've won, but I play it and I just want to play it again. It's really good.
I can confirm that the only person that I know from Oz that's going to Essen that's on their must get list, and they are
is it really?
Limited copies, and they are like racing to go get it. So Stacey, who's a Patreon member and a huge community member.
Oh, I love Stacey. Have I told you how much I love Stacey?
I love her so much that if she had 2 copies, I'm sure the other one would find a home in Victoria. That's the kind of thing. Yeah, but like it looks great. I just looked it up when you were explaining it so I could get a bit of a visual on it. But yeah, like it sounds.
I mean, the whole thing with the trumps, it feels like it's almost like a trick-takery game, but it's not trick-takey. It's not trick-takey, but it just gives off that sort of vibe. But yeah, it also feels a lot like Love Letter, where if you're playing like a 2-player Love Letter, it's like you're trying to remember what they've discarded and what potentially got. And you get that sucky situation where the low cards don't give you much to get the low cards have a really bad action, but the good actions. Well, I don't want to. Oh, the other thing is the 8, which is the best card. If you play the 8, you end the round straight away, and the other person doesn't get one last turn. But who wants to get rid of an 8? It's a guaranteed win on one of the districts, particularly in later stages of the game. If Dracula's already turned 3 people in one district, you want to lock your 8 into that last district so that they don't get the 4th one. So, a lot of really juicy decisions in this one. It's great. Good fun.
It's one of these games where you have to admire the creativity, because you have basically a deck of cards, and yet, with a couple of additional things, but the rules sounds extremely simple, and yet the decisions that you have to make are a lot of fun, and it gets a lot of perceived agency from the players as well as to what can I do to change this? And, that's not just perceived, it's actual impact you can have on the game. And I don't think it's easy to achieve that with a simple rule set and simple list of components. I think it takes creativity. It takes a lot of effort. So I love these games. I was playing an even simpler game the other day, one of the first games we've ever bought, Lost Cities.
Mm-hmm.
And I taught it to my brother, and we've been playing it on Board Game Arena, and we've both been enjoying it more than what we would ever admit. So, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
you do have a bit of a luck component to them, but it's so quick and fun that it's just part of the game. And it doesn't really matter if you drew this card and the other person drew a different card. You have ways around it.
Yeah. I think for me, I really enjoy just the battle of wits. It's just like 1v1, your cards versus mine. How can I outsmart you? It's like, all right, you got me that time, but I'm going to get you on the next round. And yeah, I really enjoy that sort of battle of wits.
So that's Dracula versus Van Helsing.
Uh-huh.
Very good. Adrian, what have you got for us, mate?
Well, I was lucky enough to be taught a game a couple of weeks back, actually, that has sat with me for quite a bit in my head as another game that I really think Finn would enjoy, and he's kind of being my main gaming buddy, along with Matt Woods at the moment. But that's Splendor Duel, and I know Dan has spoken about this, and he loves it, and I know Jules also spoke about this, and he also loved it. I don't know if you've played it yet, Def, but it's really,
I've
really
played Splendor. Harry showed it to me recently, and we've played a few games. I really enjoy it, but I haven't played the Duel version. So
yeah, the Duel definitely it's done by the same designers who did Splendor, right? And it's a re-implementation or a revisiting of that. And it's kind of cool because I don't know. I know that I can't remember the name of the other designer. Give me 1 second. It is Marc Andre. I know that he designed Splendor, but Bruno Cathala helped with Splendor Duel. I don't know if Bruno Cathala was on the original Splendor or not, but he has done Seven Wonders Duel. So I wonder if they brought him in to be like, hey, you've had some experience with doing this duel system game. Let's see what we can do with Splendor. Anyway.
Yeah, I mean, Bruno Cathala has done some phenomenal games.
Yes, 100%.
Five Tribes comes into mind.
Five Tribes, one of my favorites.
Is it King Domino as well, or just Queen Domino? I know that he did one. I know that he did Queen Domino, but maybe King as well. But yeah, he's a fantastic designer, does great games. I think Abyss as well is in that list, possibly. So yeah. Anyway, the game is really solid, and I'm enjoying more of these 2-player only games. And I never really have. Beer and Bread is brilliant. Splendor Duel is fantastic. It just takes a game that had a really easy kind of concept and a great family weight game and a great gateway game for many people, including myself, and just sort of took it up a notch and made it more thinky, more interesting choices. And that's why I really enjoyed it. And it was really close. It was down to that one last turn. And I wonder how many games you've played it, Dan, more than I have. Obviously, I've only played it the once, but I wonder how many games come down to if I got one more turn, I was going to win it anyway. So let's say I won it on my turn, Dan, but on your subsequent turn, you would have won it regardless. I wonder how many times that happens, because that happened in our game. Have you had much experience?
I'm actually just seeing if I can bring up the scores, but I remember they were very, very close because Jen and I were both very big fans of Splendor anyway. And so, we loved the tight, and it was very, very close.
So, Dan, you've played both the older game and the Duel version.
Yeah, and for the most part, I only ever used to play Splendor with Jen, my wife, anyway. So Splendor Duel works out perfectly for us. When we get the boys involved, we're more likely to play Marvel Splendor.
Yeah.
But just playing 2 players, Splendor Duel is probably a much better alternative.
It just has a much more interesting mechanism for selecting and selection of your duels. Like, that is the crux of the game, really. It's very similar to Splendor. It really is. It's, buying cards, picking cards. They have little bonus actions on, which does make the game more fun and interesting. And they obviously, as you acquire more cards, that gives you a bigger engine and a bigger arsenal to acquire even more cards and even stronger cards. But the action selection system, where you lay out the jewels on a little grid in front of you, and you can pick, I believe it's three in a row.
Yep.
But they cannot have a gold in that row, because if the gold is like a wild, so you have to take that by itself. But the purple jewel or the pink jewel, which I can't remember the name of,
the pearl,
pink jewel, the pearl. That's it. The pearl builds specific cards, so it has those cards tend to be a little bit more interesting. They might give you victory points. They might give you the better of the actions, the bonus actions, but it just gives you a lot more options as opposed to just getting chips and building it up. There's more of a thinky puzzle to what you are picking at the time, which I really appreciated. I thought it was a great implementation of that. So I wonder why they didn't do it for a 4-player. Do you know what I mean? Like, well, they just went for the duel. Whereas if you had a slightly bigger grid, you could do it potentially 4-player, right?
Well, it's interesting that this is coming up, because, I mean, I think most people would agree that Seven Wonders Duel is a better game than Seven Wonders. And I don't know if that's because of the dynamics, in a 2-player game is easier to, evolve a system into something more, or straight up, you use the experience you have from the first game and you kind of evolve it for a 2-player game, but also maybe fine-tune a lot of the things that were in the first game and make it a better game. I don't know. But, I mean, this is the first thing that comes to mind because of Seven Wonders Duel and how much I've played that game as well.
It's an interesting approach, isn't it? Because they're taking a game, in both instances, they're taking a game and going, right, how do we make it tighter? Where it's how do we take that experience of playing Splendor or playing Seven Wonders and get that same experience just in a smaller, concentrated two-player space without losing the
core values,
the energy, of what people love about the original game. And the interesting thing that they've done with Splendor Duel is they've added those privilege things so that you don't necessarily get an advantage. If you do something that's really, really cool, the other person will gain a privilege scroll so that they can actually come back, and it balances the game out in that respect. Even to the point where whoever starts, the other person starts with a privilege scroll, so that there's no advantage right from the get-go.
Yeah, I just thought it was great. I thought it was brilliant, and I think it's definitely worth exploring if you're looking for a 2-player game that's not super long. Like, it was very quick.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about the length, yeah.
Yeah.
I just checked BGA as well. We've played 5 games, bar one. The other 4 all came down to within a point of each other. So, very good. Definitely tight.
Splendor Duel. Very good. Well, I may have to break this chain of lightweight games. Finally, in this episode, I think I have been playing. Adrian, you put your hand up.
If your game title has the word age in it, it automatically means it's going to take ages to play and it's super heavy.
Yes. So it's not Through the Ages. It's not Age of Steam.
No.
Age of Empires.
Age of Empires. So, as you may know, I am a huge fan of Gaia Project, and recently Capstone Games and Fräulein Spiel released a new game in the Terra Mystica universe, if you like, or a spin-off game of Terra Mystica, which Gaia Project also is, called Age of Innovation. And to be honest with you, when I first saw this, I was in two minds about it. The main reason being this sort of generic fantasy theme doesn't really do much for me. I much rather prefer the space theme Gaia Project has. And also, Gaia Project, from what I've seen between that and Terra Mystica, to me seems the more sort of evolved game, if you like. It has a few more things going on, most notably the tech tracks that are a big part of the game that are not as exciting in Terra Mystica. So when I found out more information about this, I got more excited because it seemed like an evolution of Terra Mystica. And this is where I come in and joke and say, this is the Terra Mystica game that wants to be more like Gaia Project.
Mhm.
So, but they have done a very good job in terms of evolving almost everything in the game. And one of the things that they've evolved is the variability of basically everything. So the way the game works is you have 6 or 7 different color terrains, which is basically your player board. And then you have a bunch of tiles, like more than 10, 12 or 14 maybe, called the faction tiles. And then you draft these at the start of the game, and there's a slot in your player board that the faction tiles go in with their special abilities and everything, which means that unlike the other games in this series, Terra Mystica and Gaia Project, the factions' abilities are not tied to a certain terrain type, which means that you have a completely different take on the game, because, the red faction would always have this ability, and they have a fixed start on the map or a fixed map layout, at least in Terra Mystica. And so, after a while, you play that a certain way, I suppose. In Gaia Project, that is less obvious because of the variability of the map, with the galaxy tiles being turned and set up in a different way in every game. But in this game, you not only have the factions that are different and can be slotted into different player boards, you also have the main building, which we call the Planetary Institute in Gaia Project. In Age of Innovation, it's called the Palace. That is also separate tiles that you essentially have a market at the start of the game, number of players plus 1 type of thing. And so the first person that builds this building, they choose which one they want. So the ability of that building also is something that will be different in every game. So I think that with a combination of it goes up to 5 players, it has 2 sides to the board, and so that you can actually play it in all player combinations, and you can even play, a 3-player game on the 4 to 5 player side, or you can play it on the 1 to 3 player side, depending on where you want to be in terms of how tight or how comfortable you want the game to be. They've evolved everything in the game, and you can tell even the package, even the rule book and the attention that has gone into the components and all of that. I think that it is a more evolved version of Terra Mystica. Having said that, I do think that when you have so much components or part of the factions that you play of the game that change all the time, you no longer have this connection with these factions. You no longer say, hey, I want to try and learn to play more of these guys. Well, because their ability of their main building can be different in every game.
Yeah, I get you.
So you lose that. Yeah, you know how in Gaia Project you kind of play, the Firax and you play them 5-6 times, and you have this feeling of progression, this feeling of, oh, I've learned a bit more about them. The game is so deep, obviously, that you never kind of peak, but you have that feeling of progression. And I may be jumping the gun here because I haven't played Age of Innovation that much, but I do think that you lose that here. On the flip side, you get massive amounts of replayability and variability because every combination is now different. You can come up with all sorts of different things. But at its heart, it's the same game, right?
I was going to say, it feels like the same game from what I've seen. Would you pick this over Terra Mystica? Like this would be your go-to over the 2?
I would, for a couple of reasons. One is Gaia Project has been my sort of go-to heavy Euro for the last couple of years, and even after having almost 100 games of it, it still feels fresh and challenging. And so it would take something very, very impactful to dethrone that. But I wasn't looking to dethrone Gaia Project. I was looking to just add a bit of variety. Or if you like, I know I like this system. how can I get more of it? And with Terra Mystica being a game which is now probably 10 years old, I think it was published in 2012, correct me if I'm wrong, but also having the fixed map and all the factions fixed on the map in terms of, what their home terrain type is. Yeah, I thought, and this was initially a game that was designed to be played with more players. They've added expansions for solo much later, and they've had many, many expansions now. But I thought Age of Innovation looked like they're taking the best bits out of Terra Mystica, and they're not trying to make a new game as they did with Gaia Project. They're trying to make a better evolution of it. It's not a re-implementation of Terra Mystica. I think it's different enough. But for me, that I love Gaia Project, I would never have both of these games, Terra Mystica and Age of Innovation. And so I picked this one. So far, it's been a success. The solo mode it has inside is the same one designed by the Automa Factory for Gaia Project. So very, very simple. Flip a card, take an action, takes 5 seconds for the Automa to take its action. It's brilliant, works well. It's a challenge. It has different levels of difficulty. And as another example of the evolution of these series of games, in Age of Innovation, you have different factions that the Automa can play. And there's like a bunch of cards. There's like about maybe 15 of them. And they're like, these are different things that they do either as part of their setup or as part of a special ability, or, their faction ability is different, which, again, you get in Gaia Project, but it is a slightly more evolved now. So it's been really interesting to see and sort of measure it against Gaia Project, which, as many people know, is my favorite game. And for me, for now, I feel like this is providing enough of something fresh and something different to keep me occupied and interested. I don't know if that is going to last for very long, but like I said before, I kind of already knew that this wasn't going to replace Gaia Project for me. I still think it is a great game to play. And I think it's definitely going to do really well based on, the popularity of Terra Mystica, which has been a massively popular game, a lot more than Gaia Project. So I think Age of Innovation will do really, really well in the coming months.
Have you tried it at 5 players yet?
No.
Because I'd be very interested to see what that did, because I obviously have the 5-player barrage map, so it changed the map, right? So it made it more spacious for 5 people. Whereas if you play this at 4 players, you're using the same map. You don't block anything out though, right? Like there's no blocking of map areas or anything.
So
like
the main
that.
board is double-sided. One side is, if I remember correctly, 4 and 5 for 4 and 5 players, and the other side is for, solo 2 players and 3-player game.
So using the same space for 4 and 5.
Correct.
It would be interesting to see how tight it gets with 5, because you're having more limited space, so you're going to have less, you're going to be jostling against each other a little bit more. So yeah, I would like to try it at 5 at some point.
Yeah, for sure. I think it might be a bit long at 5. I mean,
that's the problem as well. Like that's the kickback as well, right? How it takes longer. Like the 5-player barrage game we played, that took hours because it was a big game and it was like an event game. So if you played this at 5, would that become almost like an event game, like your TI or your barrage at 5? Like it becomes a thing.
Yeah, it can be. I don't think it's going to be that long. The game is still only 6 rounds, and you can only do certain things before you run out of resources and stuff like that in every round. But there's a lot of depth in these games, right? The original Terra Mystica game, I think, and this is why it's been so massively popular, there's so much depth in the gameplay there. And I do think that some of the things that they have kept true to the original game, like the tracks that you go up, in this case, they are for like science tracks. So you have like medicine, law, engineering and something else. In Gaia Project, the technology tracks it, so you get things as you're moving up. They almost become, equally important to what's happening to the rest of the board and the rest of the game. And
they become part of your strategy, right? In Gaia Project.
And in these games, they're a bit more to the side. But there's other things in there that provide additional capabilities or additional opportunities for discovery. They have these innovation tiles that are a one-off thing, and they have these neutral buildings as well. So if you've played Gaia Project or Terra Mystica, in this game you have a bunch of white buildings that they don't belong to a faction. They're neutral, and the only way to build these is through some special either technology tiles, which are called something else in Age of Innovation, I can't remember, or these new type of tiles called innovation tiles. And when you take that, some of them may have the option to build one of the neutral buildings, and it acts like a normal building and belongs to you, but nobody else can build it. And so you can end up with different approaches to this game. I think ultimately, for people that have not tried Terra Mystica, I think, this becomes a very viable alternative, albeit much more expensive, I think, because it's a much bigger sort of package as it comes. But I think you can get Terra Mystica big box with all the expansions now as well. So there you go. Age of Innovation from Capstone Games and Freuland Spiel.
Nice.
All right, well, let's move on to some announcements and news. I hope you guys help me out here because I'm not involved in all of these, but essentially we have the Sydney Game Day on the 23rd of September. If you're looking at attending or if you're thinking about attending, please grab your tickets now. You can get them on Eventbrite. We have PAX coming up in Melbourne in the second week of October, the 6th, the 7th, and the 8th of October. Some of our crew are going to be there, hanging out with people, playing games. So if you're planning on attending PAX, make sure you check out our Discord or our Facebook group and see where we'll be hanging out and what kind of activities we'll be coming up with. Then we have the Melbourne Game Day on the 4th of November, and the tickets should be on sale as you're listening to this episode. It's a bit early, but it's always good to try and get the tickets in advance for some of these game days. They go pretty fast. And then we also have a patron trivia night. So if you're a patron or if you're thinking of becoming a patron, here's a nice evening to spend with the rest of this group on the September 29th. So that's the last Friday of the month at 8:30 p.m. on our Discord community. Come and join us to play some online games, Jackbox or whatever else the host will figure out. It's always a great evening. I see you, Dan, pointing at yourself.
I was going to say, who's got two thumbs and hosts the trivia? But it's a podcast and you can't see my thumbs. But no, this end of this month, I'll be hosting the pub trivia. So come along. It's always a good night. We tend to alternate at the end of 1 month, we'll do a Jackbox night for our Patreons, and the next month we'll do a trivia night.
Trivia.
And Chris, who's one of our Patreons, actually hosted the last one. So I got in early and said, I'm hosting the next one.
The last one was fantastic. That whatever that song melody thing is at the end, I don't remember the name of it, but that blew my mind.
Oh, yes, that's right. Chris's bonus round, he played from, it's the 4-chord song by Axis of Awesome, where they used the same 4 chords to play a whole bunch of songs. And Chris played it for us, and we had to list as many as we could.
I think there's like 70 or something.
I was going to say about 70 or 80 songs.
And we were getting a point for every band. A point for every band and a point for every song. And I was writing on the back of a invoice that I had made. So I was just turning the paper to try and fit everything in. But Nikki, who was one of the Patreons, she had a list and it looked concise. And
I think she covered maybe 80, she got maybe 80% of them. 80% of them she just nailed.
Yeah, it was amazing.
So if it's not, and if you are a patron, you haven't attended one of our trivia nights before, it is a pub trivia style. So there will be a couple of board game rounds, but there'll also be music, TV, movies. I'm going to be throwing in a current affair style sort of news in the news, and as well there's a bonus round. But it's lots of fun. We always put a bit of a board game twist on it. So yeah, it's a lot of fun.
Fantastic. So again, this is on the 29th of September at 8:30 p.m. Last but not least, we have a big announcement to make, except not just quite yet. So you almost got me there. Like you thought I was going to announce it, and I could see you pushing the button, but I didn't. So yes, next week, please make sure to tune in.
Episode 260.
260? That's it. Episode 260 for a very big announcement. We're very, very excited for it. I'm not going to jump the gun. I see Adrian sweating already. I'm going to move on to the next topic.
I would.
Don't forget to listen to the next episode.
You know that game you've been wanting for a long, long time? The one that's been on your wish list for ages? Yeah, that one. The one you've been adding to your cart and taking off again, umming and ahhing about whether you should get it or not? Well, I'm here to push you over the edge and say go to adventgames.com and add that to your cart right now. I bet you that Dean has a great price on it. He's got great customer service, flat rate shipping, and there's so many other goodies to explore on the website. Wonderful categories all organised to pick the exact game that's right for you and the group that you play with. So head over now, don't hesitate, to adventgames.com.au and add that game to your cart now.
Let's go to our question of the pod. Now, I have to say, the question of the pod from last week gave us some of the most lengthy and really intricate answers we've gotten since we started the question of the pod. I don't know if you guys feel that way, but I've been reading and reading and reading. I was like, I had way too many choices on which ones to highlight.
Yeah, It was a really good and interesting conversation. I'm terrified of reading some of these answers out because they're too long. So I know I'm going to fumble, so you'll have to bear with me as I do. But it was great. It was really good to see everybody getting involved with it, and everyone's different point of view was really cool. It's like what was important to them. So
yeah, as a reminder, the question of last week was, why does theme have an impact on your gaming experience? So Adrian, do you want to
I'll
fumble through the first few
bear with
responses?
Me. So Gene Helix Rhodes said, because it offers immersion, escapism from mundane life. Where else can I sling spells, shoot monsters, throw grenades, and engage in tense combat and conflict? Theme is a massive draw card for me. And I totally get it. Like, it is a form of escapism. Like, it's like watching a movie or something like that. So, something that's super interactive as well. So, Cam Green D6, love the green, by the way, brother. After 3,000 years of abstract games on BGA, yeah, that's pretty good. Anything with a veil theme boosts my overall willingness to learn and enjoy the game. Also, it's just context, and when theme is integrated well, it helps to give you an understanding of the game's objectives and mechanics. And I totally get that as well. Like, we all talk about that, right? We've spoken about that at great length, Def, especially with things like On Mars and stuff. Like, they just, when it makes sense and the theme flows, like, the game just is smooth, you know? So,
yeah.
This one here I really liked as well.
Yes.
Colin McCarthy. As a relatively new person to the hobby, theme is everything to me right now, as I explore the wide and somewhat overwhelming world of board gaming. Amazing art and seemingly strong theme draws me in. It's the thing that will encourage me to try games with just about any mechanic. While I'm more drawn to medium and heavy worker placement games, an incredible theme in a lighter game like Fit to Print, which should be on its way, comes to mind, pulls me in. Conversely, theme plays a huge role in making me want to replay a heavy game like TI4 and On Mars, because you simply feel like you're in that world. And even though it's quite a lift to get those sorts of games to the table, the payoff is huge. And I literally, before I read through this thing, I didn't realize he was mentioning On Mars further down, but like, that's a big one. And TI is obviously a big one, and I totally get it. So it's kind of, it's massive. I think the theme is huge. And whatever that theme is that sings out to that particular person, and they're like the banner for, I get it. Do you know what I mean? Like, I understand why it's so important. So
yeah, it's like we were saying at the top of the show. If it's birds, if it's Disney, if whatever's going to get them in. I remember Mitch saying a while back when he reviewed the Star Wars Pandemic, if Star Wars fans are getting this game, but then being welcomed to the world of Pandemic, that can only be a good thing. Now, I mean, I heard the game was actually quite good, as opposed to the World of Warcraft one, which was middling. But beside being a good game, if they're suddenly going and buying all the other Pandemic games and then seeing what other sort of cooperative games are out there, that can only be a good thing in terms of theme. But the thing I liked about this question particularly was it was quite polarizing in some responses. Some people were the complete opposite. Peter Campbell said it's the icing on the cake. But without a good cake to start with, there's very little point.
Yeah.
Ben Turner said, because games are all about telling stories for me. The story of winning the contest of wits, wills, random card drawing against other people of the game itself is a fun part of it. But the deeper story of what occurred to the protagonists within the game as it developed, and the ups and downs, the fortunes and losses, the glories and defeats, are even more evocative and fire my imagination so much more. Jess Rachel said, a theme that attracts you to the game is part of the visual appeal, but then the theme should help guide you into the mechanics of the game so that it all ties together, makes sense, and adds to the intuitiveness of the game experience. It's all a part of making a game feel and play well. And then Ashley, the question being, why does theme have an impact on your gaming experience? Ashley Perriman said, it doesn't. Depth, strategy, gameplay count for way more.
Yeah, and that's an interesting set of approaches, right? We have three. I felt like I was able to sort of box most of all of these responses into three categories. One was, well, actually, theme is all about helping you understand the game better, right? Help you interpret the mechanics, help you understand the objectives. The second category was all about the story and the immersion and all of that. And then there's the third category that says theme is useful, but actually without proper good mechanics and proper gameplay and strategy, it doesn't count for much. So, and all three of these are, 100% part of the discussion. I think I can relate myself to all three of these.
Yeah, same.
I don't know which one to pick.
I'm the same.
Absolutely,
I definitely agree.
I mean, sometimes if you're playing a game that's at its heart is almost like an abstract game, and they've tried to tack a theme onto it, it's like, come on, you might as well just left it as like an abstracty sort of puzzle game. I'm still going to enjoy it because the depth and the mechanics and the replayability is still there. Why did you have to make it a Disney game? It would have been just as good if it was, yeah, I know, I'm not ragging on Disney, but sometimes you can tell if the theme is just painted on almost like a last minute thing. So yeah, I completely understand where
here's everything, mate. He's going to come and knock on your door.
This mouse. I have it in for this mouse. We probably need to do a Patreon episode about Disney and their choices.
So Adrian won't be invited to that one then.
I think it would make for an interesting discussion.
Adrian's done enough Disney Patreon episodes, so I'll have you know. Our Patreon's going to attest to that.
Well, thank you to everyone in the community for the massive amount of responses and discussion this question the pod generated. I was really keen to wake up every morning and reading new responses to this, so thank you. But let's see if we can have a repeat here and see if we can get a new question of the pod this week that will get us an equally interesting amount of discussion going. And based on the games that we spoke about today, and Adrian, you spoke about Lorcana and Earth, and we spoke about other games that have been hyped a lot. The question of the pod this week is, how does hype around board games influence you? And we've left this question pretty open-ended for a good reason. We just want to have your take around maybe hype around specific games, or hype as, a medium, or as an impact overall. What are you guys thinking? How does hype around board games influence you?
Well, it's obviously influenced me, right? Sorry, Dan, I'll just jump in. It's obviously influenced me because I'm looking at Lorcana. I got Earth, but I don't know. Like, am I getting caught up in the rush, or is it because I'm just interested? Do you know what I mean? Like, I don't really know. I also bought Arc Nova, but that was before it really had any hype. So I wasn't. Maybe do I get caught in the hype? You guys could judge me. Like, you could judge away. Do I get caught in hype? I don't really know.
We're so close to it. We all do from time to time. I've been guilty of. Hey, I've got all-in Nemesis pledge behind me. Only $500 worth of stuff. Most of it's still in shrink.
That was the death hype. I remember you coming over to my house when we first met.
I know,
to buy a secondhand game from me. I can't even remember what that was now. And I had just finished playing Nemesis, and I was like, you need to sit down, dude, and I need to tell you about this story. And you left the house like, whoa, okay. This was amazing.
I'm reaching for the credit card as you're telling me about it.
So I don't think it is a bad thing per se. It does influence us, and I think over time you kind of learn to.
I like to think, but you wait until whatever happens, and I'll start buying stuff again, sight unseen. But I like to think I'm a bit more seasoned now. I know what games I like, and so already my tastes have narrowed. But back when I was really getting into this hobby, and it was really kicking off, I was just wanted to taste every flavor. I was Kickstarter crazy. Everything was on Kickstarter. Everything was, what's Advent got for sale this week, and what's on the secondhand market, and I'm just like, I want it all. And as soon as Dice Tower reviews something, I'm like, yep, cool, I'm getting that on pre-order and blah blah blah. But now I'd like to think. That I kind of know what works for me and what doesn't. So the hype aside, like Lorcana, for instance, I'm just like, nah, I get it. My boys would go nuts for it if I was to start doing it. But no, not going to buy it. Not going to buy into any of that sort of stuff.
He's so convincing.
It's just like, I'm not letting my boys even read anything that's got Lorcana written on it.
dirty word in this house.
Yeah, that's it.
Very good. Okay, well, it doesn't matter what we think. We want to hear about what you guys think in the community. We're going to post the question of the pod, as we usually do, on our Discord and on our Facebook group. So please take the time to let us know your thoughts on how does hype around board games influence you. And I'm sure we'll have a very interesting discussion, same as last week.
Hey everyone, it's Jules here. Just to share some news about what Let's Play Games is doing at PAX Australia 2023 this year. There's going to be a number of new releases that are happening at Essen as well as PAX this year, and I wanted to share that exciting news with you. The first of which is Stonemaier Games releasing their new title, which is recently announced, called Apiary. It looks really, really cool, as well as Pandasaurus Games is going to be releasing their new title Unrest, a cool 2-player head-to-head game. There are other titles like Everdell Farshaw, which has just hit the shelves in Australia, that will be available to try at PAX this year as well. There's going to be also a Game Quest activity happening where you can go around to all of these booths, doing a demo game, learning about the game, experiencing it, and being able to collect prizes for the more demo games that you do. I'm excited to share other titles in the coming weeks that will be showcased by Let's Play Games at PAX. If you haven't bought your ticket yet, I'd encourage you. There's going to be so many cool things happening in the tabletop space at PAX 2023 this year. And we hope to see you at the table there.
Moving on to our next segment, Swear and Oath. But before we do that, just want to do a quick community shout out and big thank you to our Patreon members. The ones we're doing a shout out this week are James McNerney, Andrew Dunn, Mark Rickards, and Chad Scarola. Thank you very much for being part of our community, folks. And if you want to support the podcast, you can always do that on patreon.com/boardgamebarbecue. We do exclusive podcast episodes on that for our Patreon supporters, even though some of them could be Disney related with Adrian or without Adrian in. But there are plenty of other ways you can contribute without becoming a patron if you like. If you leave us a star rating and a review on Apple Podcasts, it helps us massively, or even the Spotify new star rating system. It does help us get the podcast to more people around the world. And please, if you can become part of our Board Game Barbecue community on Facebook or on Discord, or you can follow us on our social media. All of the links are going to be in the show notes. Thank you very much for supporting the show. We really appreciate it. Now, swearing an oath. I cannot remember the last time I was on a podcast episode with Dan. So it's fair to say I am not fully familiar with your excuses for failing your oaths, which is a common occurrence on this podcast.
You mean me personally or all of us?
No, overall.
I feel attacked.
Common occurrence. So I will start this segment and say that my oath was, well, let me rephrase that, back that up. One of my oaths has been to play Tammany Hall at the game day in Brisbane a few days ago and play more Cube Rails games. So I had a couple of oaths going. I haven't managed to play more Cube Rails games, although I did play Age of Steam at the game day, which is one game I always try to play. But I did teach Tammany Hall to a bunch of new people, and it was a great game. Everybody enjoyed it. I'm not an area control guy. I really enjoyed it. Tammany Hall was such a good fun. Lots of backstabbing and interesting stories that came out of that. So I fulfilled that oath in terms of Cube Rails games. If anybody in the community is keen to play online with me, like Chicago Express, it's on Board Game Arena, or some other Cube Rails games, ping me, let me know. Let's see if we can get this oath done. As for a new oath, I do have a new game in the collection that has escaped my Let's All the New Games Played madness of my last couple of weeks, and that is Lacrimosa.
Oh, wow.
So I'm very keen to play it. I've set it up the other day, read the rules. The game seems very interesting, and I'm a big sucker for anything related to classical music and that theme. So I'm very keen to play that game. So my new oath, apart from playing more Cube Rails games, is to play Lacrimosa. Adrian, how did you go with painting this never-ending miniature?
I'm not even supposed to be here today. I am actually covering for Mike, who couldn't make it. So maybe Mike's done my oath for me. I don't know. But yeah, I definitely intend to get it done. And like I said before, I don't want to rush it and then end up like fudging it and it looks terrible, because it's now like a major part of our game, because we've actually
you've done that once.
Yes, and I don't want to do it again. I don't want to strip the paint off of me another time. But I would actually like to add another oath in, and I don't often do that because I am terrible at getting them done. But recently it's come to my attention personally anyway that one of our community members, Jay Yates, has been involved with another Button Shy game. And I have actually got the print and play to this game, and I've already played it, and it's really good. It's called Battlecrest. It was actually printed by a community member, Mandalorian. He printed it out, brought it to the game day, and I really enjoyed it. And I've played it twice now, but I'd like to try and play it a bit more and play it with someone else other than MJ, who just whooped me. So I'll probably drag Matt Woods back in again, because he helped me get my other oath done. So new oath, complete Phoenix, play Battlecrest, teach Matt Woods and play with Matt Woods. The next one, which was to play Earth back to back, and I have done that. So you can tick that off.
And regretted it ever since.
No, not actually regretted it. Like the game is fine. It's just not. It was not like a top 10 tier game for me. So I was just with the hype surrounding it. I was going in with, delusions of what it was going to be and what I had expectations of. And then when I played it, and it felt quite samey after a couple of plays for me. That when that happens for me, it just drops off quite quickly. That's all. So
very good. Dan, what about you?
My outstanding oath was I've got two oaths. One of them was put upon me by Jonathan from our Discord, he snuck an oath for me into an Apple 5-star review, which is to teach.
I knew there would be an excuse in there somewhere.
Hey! It's to teach Arkham Horror, the living card game, at the next Melbourne game day. So I've had an opportunity to fulfill that one. My other oath was to play Too Many Bones Unbreakable, which I have done. And I'm not telling anyone anything new here. Jeez, it's good.
Yeah.
I've come obviously late to the party with Too Many Bones, but I had a lot of fun with it. It was a bit intimidating for me. My only experience with it was Brad, who taught it to me at Sydney Game Day a long time ago, one of our first Sydney Game Days. So I kind of approached it as this is just going to be a learning game. I'm just going to go through, and I'm glad I did try and sort of have that mindset going in, because there's a lot going on, hey? Going every single action within a turn, I'm consulting the rulebook, I'm consulting the player guides, I'm consulting what does this skill do on this baddie, and how does it work with this skill, and now it's this baddie's turn, so what does that skill do, and how does it interact with this skill? And obviously there's new skills as well to do with tied into the lava with the Unbreakable game, but I loved it. I made it to the end, to the tyrant at the end. I did not win. I think I lost in 2 rounds and it was all over. But I'm already itching to go back and try again. I played it two-handed, so I played it with
2 Gilocks.
Yeah, with the 2 Gilocks that come with it, Figment and Gale. And already I was having fun with their different skill sets, but obviously I didn't unlock everything. So I'd like to at the very least play it again and try unlock a few different skill sets and see how they went. I had a great one with Figment, where in the very last battle I rolled it, but it was a chrono trigger where he did damage to everyone in the baddie queue before him, and of course he was last, so I rolled the 3, so he did 3 damage to every single person in the queue before him. But I had other baddies waiting to come onto the board as well, so it cleared the board, and then the other baddies came in. But for someone who's worked in the casino industry for nearly 20 years in a previous life, the cards, the chips, the dice, it just the whole aesthetic, it just spoke to me. It sung to me, and I just loved it. So with that in mind, I'm not going to stray too far, because I want to play this more. So I'm going to make it my oath to play it again. But I'm going to play with Riffle, which is a game that I actually one of the gear locks that I backed as a separate to Unbreakable. I went on a group pledge. But Riffle, his actions actually come with a deck of cards.
Yeah.
And the actions are tied to almost making poker hands and stuff. So I'm just cranking up that sort of that casino dial one more notch. And I, Dan Harris, swear that the next time I'm on the pod, I'm going to play Unbreakable a couple more times, but I'm going to start to explore Riffle and see if I can do it from the bottom of the deck or something.
Excellent. Thanks, Dan. Another podcast sponsored by Cheap Theory Games, as Connor would eloquently say. So that brings us to the end of our oaths and the end of the show for today. Thank you, everybody, for listening. Thank you for supporting the community. Dan and Adrian, thank you very much for joining me tonight. It's been great chatting with you.
Thanks, Dev. I enjoyed that.
Thanks, Dev.
Take care, everybody, and see you all next time. Cheers.
Bye.
Bye.
What?
I can't type.
Shenanigans aplenty.